Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Talking Freight, the weekly freight series brought to you by Cerasis, a North American third-party logistics company specializing in transportation management solutions for shippers. And since we do specialize in solutions for shippers, say that 3 times fast, we want to make sure that we educate you on all things shipping so you can go back and improve your own shipping practices. And obviously, the more you know about what you're doing every single day, and the more you have sound fundamental principles in place, then you can affect your desired outcomes, increase efficiency, and reduce overall costs. And speaking of cost, today we're going to talk about the LTL world's dirty little secret. No, we're not talking about flat tires or running out of fuel. We're talking about costs and hidden costs, sometimes to the shipper. What are those? Well, those are accessorials. So put that into your spell checker and see if it recognizes it. See, even the spell checker didn't see that one coming. And much like the spell checker, shippers don't often know that accessorials will be included on their freight invoice by carriers. Why? Well, accessorials are extra shipping charges for extra services that carriers have to perform, either based on errors or in special circumstances. Now, these might be things like a lift gate or going into residential zones or reways. And accessorials aren't going to show up in RTMS or when you call a carrier and they give you the price for your shipment details. They're going to show up after the fact. And that's why it's really hard to understand why you were charged them. And sometimes on an invoice, a carrier may not even include the full detail. And so that's why freight invoice audits can be very vital when looking out for accessorials. So today we're going to tell you what are the 3 most common types of accessorials, and then we're going to explain some ways that you can be proactive when it comes to accessorials. So what are the 3 most common types of accessorials? Well, the first one are residential adjustments. You may be shipping something that ends up going to someone's house, and when you're looking at the rates, well, that just wasn't a part of the cost. And so you get that extra charge and you see that on the invoice and it's unexpected. And that's what makes accessorials so difficult. You can't budget for them. There are surcharges or special service codes or other service fees that are included in your contract with each carrier, and you can budget for that. Well, when you're slapped with an extra charge you didn't see coming, it's really hard for you to go to your boss and say, I've met my budget for the year. So when a residential adjustment comes up, it's a surprise. And just like that adjustment, weight adjustments are the second most common accessorial that you're going to see. Now, this simply comes from you guessing the weight, or maybe your scale's broken. You might have thought you had the right weight, but it comes back and you have a reweigh, and that's kind of frustrating, especially if you thought you were accurate. The third one is any additional handling fees. These are things like liftgate, or maybe they have to get more labor in because your freight's difficult and they didn't expect it to be as heavy as it was, or whatever issue as it relates to handling. So, like I said, those are the most 3 common accessorials that you can see. So already planning now, you can see to look out for those and plan for them. But they're also going to be added after the fact, and there's not much you can do with it unless you know how to be proactive. So don't get mad. Get proactive. Now, some might say, don't hate the player or the carrier, hate the game. Now, carriers make a lot of money off of accessorials. They have to stay profitable too, and without them, there's no one to haul your freight. So it's important that they're profitable. But that doesn't mean that you can't do anything about it. So instead of hating the player or even hating the game, get to know the rules and then you can win. So first, understand that accessorials exist. That's the LTL industry. But the first thing you can do when it comes to the second most common accessorial, weight adjustments, is whenever you're shipping, make sure you do have a scale that's calibrated correctly and is right. Make sure you're using a transportation management system, much like the Cerasis Rater, where you can store those common accessorials, where you have a list that you can check for, where you understand your carrier data so you can see what accessorials they've dinged you for in the past. And if you're seeing things like extra weight adjustments or an accessorial for a lift gate, well, then you understand that those carriers are commonly doing those things, and you can continuously improve over time. The second route is to use things like scanners or automation tools or automated data entry. Now, I mentioned the TMS and having a list of accessorials and using data to see, what accessorials carriers are commonly putting on your freight invoices. Well, you can put some automation rules knowing that if a certain commodity is picked within the TMS, that you should also go ahead and proactively check those accessorials. And the third way you can combat and stay proactive with accessorials is to use a 3PL. They're experts. Companies like us, Cerasis, are dealing with over 15,000, 20,000 shipments a week or more. That's hundreds of thousands, if not almost millions of shipments a year. Hey, we know the accessorials game. We understand how carriers are monetizing. We know how to look out for carriers. And so if you lean on a 3PL, they not only can help guide you in how to look out and avoid accessorials, but they can work on negotiating that in your contract and getting a lower rate for accessorials. They can work on auditing your invoices and on your behalf, getting a refund from the carrier. So those are great ways to stay proactive. So accessorials, hey, they happen. Sometimes they're after the fact, and they can be pretty frustrating. But that doesn't mean, you're just at the mercy of the carriers. Get proactive, use data, work with a 3PL, and you too can get rid of accessorials and not have to see them as often as you'd like. Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Talking Freight. We'll continue giving you great freight tips each week, published on every Friday. We hope you are enjoying this series. And if you do love it, give us a like and let us know that you really do enjoy the content, or subscribe to our channel and hit that little bell icon, and that way you get an email every time we publish each Friday. Thanks for watching. We hope you have a great weekend, and we'll see you next Friday.